Now, House Republicans have passed a defense spending bill that limits abortion access, transgender care, and diversity training for military personnel. The controversial legislation was approved on Friday, primarily along party lines. This after the far-right Freedom Caucus pushed to include amendments on major social issues. Democrats then accused Republicans of turning what's usually a bipartisan bill into a culture war. The legislation is now headed to the Senate, where it's certainly expected to fail. Here's what House Speaker Kevin McCarthy had to say about that.
Just focus on the military. Stop using taxpayer money to do their own wokeism. A military cannot defend themselves if you train them in woke. We don't want Disneyland to train our military. We want our men and women in the military to have every defense possible, and that's what our bill does. The money focuses directly on their quality of life and, more importantly, on the investment.
Now, Republicans are specifically defending an amendment passed in the House's annual defense spending bill last week that blocks the Pentagon from covering the expenses for women in the military who need to travel out of state to have an abortion procedure. Here is what Republican Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas, as well as Congressman Michael McCaul of Texas, had to say yesterday about that measure.
Shouldn't all troops, regardless of where they're stationed, get the same treatment? Like, why penalize them for living in Texas?
Well, they're free to travel to another state to have.
They'd be penalized. They'd have to take
an
time
abortion,
off.
Just not taxpayer expense.
They'd have to take the time off and the like, and so that would impact their ability to do their jobs, arguably, right? If they have to go on leave.
The military should not be paying for abortion tourism.
So what should women who are in uniform in a place where they cannot access abortion because they are there on orders, what should they do?
Well, if they want to take that step, they have 30 days of annual leave. It shouldn't be taxpayer funds giving them 3 weeks of paid, uncharged leave.
So, Allie, let's talk about the mechanics of this. Passed last week, as noted, likely to go down in the Senate. We heard Kevin McCarthy talk about wokeism. Where is this going, and what are the real-world implications of suddenly this bill being in real jeopardy?
I mean, look, this is typically something that is bipartisan in nature, and you look at the way that it came out of committee, I think it was like 58-1 or something very bipartisan like that. It's something that I asked the speaker on Friday why he thought you watched this shift from going from something that was very bipartisan to basically passing along party lines. There were a few exceptions, some of them frontliners in tough districts for re-election next year. But look, I mean, I think it speaks to the current mindset of this House Republican conference. Now, we know, because we watched this dance be done with the debt ceiling battle, that the first pass at this out of the House Republican conference is not the thing that ultimately gets passed in the end. But there are a lot of changes that are going to be made here between this House version and what the Senate is ultimately going to take up. And I think what's going to be important here is some of the promises that McCarthy may have made to get members of his conference on board here in the first place. The fact that, for example, he's now got Marjorie Taylor Greene, who he promised a spot on the conference committee for this bill. That means that she's going to be one of the folks who's in the room and actually helping to hammer out what this ultimately looks like. I think that's going to be really important. The other thing I'm looking for, too, is the way that this abortion issue, which really did start with Senator Tuberville in the Senate, him holding up those military promotions until the Pentagon changes the policy you were just talking about. It seems like he's struggling for an off-ramp a little bit. I know when he was talking to one of our NBC colleagues last week, he seemed to say that he would back down on this maybe if there were a vote. He's changed sort of the way that he's talked about this over the last few weeks. Again, it sort of looks like he's looking for some kind of an off-ramp. I'm wondering if that's one of the things that comes to fruition as they're conferencing out what this NDAA might look like. But I think more than anything, this is instructive of not just the battle that we're looking at right now on the military and how Congress is going to tell the military they can use their funds, because that's what this is, but then the later funding bill itself on spending coming in the fall and whether or not we're going to go to a government shutdown. Each of these battles, debt ceiling, now NDAA, all of that is instructive for what's ahead.
Rev, in the clips we just played, it's impossible not to be struck by the callousness of the two Republican lawmakers while talking about this. Senator Cotton used the phrase abortion tourism. Just give us your sense as to just like how he is portraying an issue that is so difficult and so central to so many women put in a situation where now, I mean, they're being political pawns.
To really minimize the impact of a woman's decision to have or not have an abortion, to try and act like this is some excursion, like you're going on a vacation spot or something, shows the callousness, you use the right word, of the right wing in these particular arguments. This is not tourism. This is basic decisions that take a lot of real gut-wrenching decisions to make. And then to try and use the fact that this country needs to have its defense at all times on alert. I mean, we have battles going on all over the world, Ukraine, etc., and we're going to play these culture wars in the middle of a time that recruitment is down. It shows you that they have no boundaries to try and moralize. And Susan, I think that you from your perch watching all of this, I mean, there's really no place I can remember in recent history where we've seen this kind of moral majority from the older days even try to interfere with military strength and military recruitment to try to make an argument that ought to be made in the public square or in churches.
Yeah, and let's think about what the political consequences will be for some of these Republican members in districts that are either swing districts or districts that Joe Biden won, who have cast now votes in favor of this pretty hardline position on abortion for women in the military. And I wonder, Richard Haass, you know, we talk about the political consequences, which are considerable, we know. What are the actual are there national security repercussions if there is a failure to pass this defense authorization bill, which I think is possible when we look at the showdown coming up?
I think this national security consequences, Susan, almost whatever happens. One is, and the Rev was getting at it a little bit, one of the biggest problems facing the military right now is retention and recruitment. And women play now an increasingly central role in the American military. You know, things have really, really changed. I'm not sure these lawmakers maybe understand that. So to weigh in on these issues in the way they're doing really undermines readiness. Yeah, that's point one. If this bill weren't to be passed because of this, yes, I mean, it would. We've already got a time now where the U.S. military can't do the procurement it needs to, again, is having personnel issues. If suddenly funds aren't available at this moment in the United States, even though we're not a direct participant in Ukraine, we're, shall we say, a major indirect participant there, plus we've got operations in every other theater of the world, that would be a major, major problem. It makes it impossible to plan. It makes it that much more difficult. Let me just make one political statement. You know, everyone around this table has been doing these issues for a long time. We've come a long way since politics stopped at the water's edge. The idea that this becomes another football for American politics, I just think is a sign of just how much things have deteriorated.
And Richard, to that point, I mean, it was a major topic of conversation last week while overseas covering the president. I mean, the defense secretary was there talking about Senator Tuberville's blockade here. They can't fill important positions. There are jobs that are key jobs in the military that are left vacant right now. President Biden himself, in his news conference in Helsinki, singled out the senator for what he's doing. And Brandon Buck, give us, you know, you've worked with a couple of Republican speakers. You're well aware of the machinations and the strategy and the GOP leadership in the House and of course, in on the Senate too. What are they doing here? Like, what is the thought process behind the Republican Party that's not just blocking leadership positions, but also, you know, doing a thing that's, to Richard's point, potentially challenging American military readiness?
Well, I think it would be a mistake to say this is a part of any plan. I mean, Kevin McCarthy held that press conference on Friday after the bill passed, a bit of a pep rally for the bill, which is funny because this was something that he was trying to avoid all week long. And going back to last week, they were held up in Rules Committee for a very long time trying to sort out how to handle this. As Ali pointed out, this was a bipartisan bill just a few weeks ago. He didn't want to do this for those political reasons. He didn't want to put his members in this position. He also knows that looking down the road, this is going to come back to the House without a lot of these provisions. And once again, he's going to have to sell this to his members as a walkback. You know, I'm a little conspiratorial, I guess, when it comes to the House Freedom Caucus and what their real motivations are. I think they like to set up a situation where the House negotiates with the Senate, doesn't get all of these more extreme provisions, and then they can put it at Kevin McCarthy's feet for not having delivered once again. I think Kevin McCarthy is facing a lot of pressure on this, and it's going to extend to when we start doing actual funding for the military. Look, we haven't failed to pass one of these authorization bills in 60 years. We don't know exactly what would happen if we didn't get one done. But we sure know that if we can't fund the military when we get to the appropriations next, that's a huge, huge problem for not just us, but lots of places around the world.